Patrick, Vice President of South Dakota Art Museum Guild, and I would like to welcome all Guild members and non-Guild members to the second virtual program of 2020-2021. And then after this program, everyone is invited to attend a short Guild meeting. But first of all, today, we are privileged to have John Lopez present a program titled In Field of Iron. John was born and raised on a ranch in northwestern South Dakota. While attending Northern State University, he discovered his interest and talent in sculpture. He has built a successful career in bronze and welded sculpture without leaving his prairie home. I would like to introduce John Lopez.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. It's great to be here. This is kind of a new thing for me to be able to present a program on Zoom, so I'm getting with the modern times here. Yeah, so I grew up in around McIntosh, South Dakota. I went to grade school in McIntosh and rode the bus. Had to get up very early, do my chores, and ride the bus to school. And so whatever little art programs or art classes we had at school were very important to me, because I soaked up all the art that I could get. And I wasn't necessarily that great of a student in the rest of the classes, but I seem to really gravitate towards drawing and creating different things, and went to high school here in Lemmon and had a great art teacher, Angel Eisenbeis, and Eric, now I'm losing his name, but he's an art teacher in Mobridge now. And I think they could kind of see that I had some talent. There was one of the sub teachers here in Lemmon thought she noticed some kind of talent, so she recommended that I go to college for commercial art. And I didn't really know what commercial art wasn't really that sure, so I signed up for school in Aberdeen at Northern State University, and that's where I discovered my love of sculpture and just kind of to learn the proportions of the human body, and there's different things that you can learn to better your skill. And Lynn Carlsgaard was one of the teachers there, and he ran the sculpture department at Northern. And I just fell in love with the whole idea of taking a little wax sculpture and making a mold of it and then casting it in bronze. So we would take these, I don't know, I had this little wax figure. It was so big. And we were studying that the human body is proportioned according to how big your head is. So there's 7.5 heads in a body. And so I would take this little wax figure to my room, and I'd be working on it and sculpting on it. And so I'd go from room to room. When you're in college, you go to your friend's room, or go over here, or go over there. And so I'm always carrying this little wax figure around, and everybody's looking at me like, what in the world is he doing? But I was hooked. And so when it came time to cast this thing, we took it through the lost wax casting process and put a ceramic cast over it, and then we melt the wax out. So then the night before the big pour, the big bronze pour, I couldn't sleep. I was so excited. And it's kind of a cool thing, the foundry, when they fire up the furnace and they start melting the bronze, that your excitement and your heart starts to pump. And so then they put these big suits on, and we pour the bronze into this shell, and your sculpture, you know, it's kind of a one-time thing, because I didn't have a rubber mold of it, but we only had just the one mold. So then when you break the mold, it's done. That's it. Only a one-time deal. So my piece turned out, and it was so exciting. And so I started to pursue a career as a sculptor, not really knowing where it would send me or where it would take me. And so I got a job working for Dale Amphier. I first got a job working for Tony Kitka for a little bit, and then it ended up that Dale Amphier was working on a big project, the Resurrection, at the High Plains Heritage Center in Spearfish. So I got a job working for Dale and worked with Jim Mahar and Kenny Laban and these people that were working for Dale Amphier. So I learned a lot working for Dale, and he was a good art teacher. And Dale did a lot of fabricated pieces like landscapes out of metal and leather and wood and stuff. So he was really good at mixing materials. And that was kind of a big turning point for me, where I could really learn to start working on a piece and then finish it and learn how to put it on a base and how to talk to your customers and how to work with people. And so then I met, through Dale Amphier, I met Dellery Davis, and Dellery took me under her wing, and she saw something in me that she thought that there was a good future for me in the art world. So she got me onto the City of Presidents project in Rapid City. And so that's when I really started professionally creating pieces. And I spent those 10 years, about 10 years, building presidents for Rapid City. And that was a big learning experience, because it was kind of a team project. There was 4 artists, and then we'd all get together and critique each other's work. And that was really hard, because they'd come in and say, if you're doing a portrait of John Kennedy and it doesn't quite look like him, they're going to try to figure out how to, what do we got to do to make this thing look like him. So it's kind of hard for your ego to sit there and take this beating. And we'd get in arguments and different things, and sometimes somebody would take a sculpting tool and try to sculpt on your piece, and you're like, no, you can't do that. So all of those experiences were building up and adding up, and the City of Presidents was kind of coming towards, I don't know, it was a little over halfway through, and my Aunt Effie was a school teacher in Midland, South Dakota, and she used to have me come to her school and give talks to the students, and she'd have all these kids get together in like a pep rally or whatever, and I was the main speaker, and I wasn't really that good of a speaker, but I'd go into the art classes and try to give these art classes. So anyway, Effie was a big fan of mine and a big believer of me. Is my dad's sister. And we got word that she was killed in a car accident. And that was really a big deal, and just kind of a shocking thing. And so I moved down to her ranch where her husband was living, and I lived with him for the next 4 years, and I helped build the cemetery on the ranch, because Gino wanted to bury his wife on the ranch, but she wanted to be buried in Timber Lake where her grandparents were buried. And so Gino didn't really go with her wishes and decided to bury her on the ranch. So I thought, I'm going to try to make this the best cemetery that I can, so that there aren't cows rubbing on her headstone. And so I dug my heels in for the next 4 years and helped the hired hand build this cemetery. And I wanted to make an angel for the top of this gate. And so I took the little, the rules that I learned at Northern State University for proportions, and I started welding this angel together just out of bits and pieces in Gino's shop. And he always was going to auctions and buying this junk and just bringing it home. So he had plenty of junk. And Effie was always trying to get him to clean this junk up and get it out of the way, And so I built this little angel and put it on top of the gate. And I thought, man, that was so much fun. And it was just kind of interesting, but it was different than the sculpting in clay and the casting in bronze, it was more, I could do it in a couple days and I could have a piece done, you know, and I didn't have to send it to the foundry. So I thought, I'm going to try and do a horse head out of this scrap metal stuff. And so that was the beginning of my scrap metal career. And so from the death of my Aunt Effie, my career took a 90-degree turn, and I'm doing art that's more abstract, but yet I'm kind of reinventing myself in a way. And so it was really invigorating to find a new style and it really spoke to people. It really started to get people's reaction. And anyway, so why don't we show the video that I put together. And the video basically is going to go through some of the work that I've done throughout the state. I've got pieces, now I can say I've got pieces all over the world. I've got a piece in France at a park in France, and then I've got a piece in Monaco. I did a piece for Grace Kelly's 90th birthday party of an Oscar, a life-size Oscar, like 5 foot tall scrap metal version of an Oscar award. And then about a year ago this time, I was in Qatar doing a show, a scrap metal show in Doha, Qatar, which was just crazy and amazing. And I met scrap metal artists from all over the world, and we're all friends on Instagram. And so I'll go in and talk about some of that stuff after, but you're going to see a video clip of the gallery that I renovated in Lemmon, and it was a real mess before I fixed it up. So when you see the video footage of the old rotten building, that was before I turned it into what it is today. So when you come to Lemmon, you're going to see the Kokomo was an old bar here, and the Kokomo was a 3-2 bar, we're right on the North Dakota border. So the drinking age in North Dakota was, you know, you had to be older to drink there. So we got a lot of people over here at the Kokomo. Was this hangout, and it was kind of a druggy, just kind of dirty old place, but has a lot of good memories for people here in town because everybody had their first beer there or whatever. So anyway, I turned it into my art gallery, and we get visitors in the summertime, and then I'll take appointments and stuff through in the winter months. But let's play the video, and then we'll have a discussion after the video. How does that sound?
My name is John Lopez, and I'm a sculptor in Lemmon, South Dakota. I'm very inspired by South Dakota landscape and the animals that are here. And so I try to sculpt things that have a historical significance. People come from all over the world to view my work and to come to the Kokomo so they can see it in person. And I think it means a lot to them that I might stop in the middle of the day and they can meet the artist. Right now we're in the sculpture garden next to my art gallery, and the Tree of Life is the latest piece that I've just added to the sculpture garden. The trunk was one of the more interesting parts of the piece because it tells a story, and there's a lot of different animals hidden within the bark of the tree, and it's kind of gone through some hardships and some droughts, and it turns this way and twists this way, and then in the spring comes back to life because you can see the blossoms, they bloom in the spring. So I wanted to include other artists in this project, so I invited artists on Instagram to come and send me blossoms that they would weld together, and then I include them in the tree. So I made all the pink blossoms, and then the ones that are not painted are made by people from all over the world. There's people from here in Lemmon, there's somebody from Australia, from Costa Rica, from Nigeria. So it's very interesting to see the different styles of blossoms that came. There was some guys from a prison, the South Dakota State Penitentiary, sent me some blossoms. So it has a lot of different meanings, and I'm really proud of this piece just because other artists could be included in it.
Sculptor John Lopez is a product of a place. His people's ranches are scattered along the Grand River in northwestern South Dakota, not far from where Sitting Bull was born and died. Not far from where thousands of buffalo were killed during the westward expansions of settlers and gold miners, in the boneyards of Tyrannosaurus rex and grizzly bears. Since farmers and ranchers populated this chunk of reservation land, real cowboys have been roping and branding and shearing and haying and harvesting. John's own talent lies in gentling colts and perfecting their bloodlines, and he started his celebration of them by sculpting in clay. Capturing every nuance, every muscle in this land where business is still conducted over a cup of coffee and neighboring is a way of life. Somehow, that way of life, where time seems to have stood still, has seen the transition from horsepower to mechanized vehicles. The rusted carcasses of discarded equipment stand testament to generations of labor, and the man who knows bloodlines has picked through them, choosing the elements of the past, the actual implements that plowed the soil, or cut the grain, or dug the dinosaur, and created the curve of a jaw, the twitch of a tail, the power of a shoulder. Join John on a tour of kitchens and scrap piles, barns and grain elevators, cemeteries and workshops, hosted by the people of the prairie. Meet Uncle Gino, brother-in-law Stuart, and scrap collectors from near and far. Listen carefully. There's a story in the wind.
Mackins, that's where they grew up right here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 4 of them. Well, Bill, he's in what?
Hey, so what made you want to donate some scrap to John for his sculptures?
Well, I bought some stuff of his, so we're returning the favor.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, we got a lot of junk around here, all right, that want to kind of get rid of, all right, so... But I guess that's about it, all right. But, yeah, I'm getting the age we better clean up the place. John can start it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, this is the beginning of a big mess.
When's the auction?
25th of May.
Coming up.
Yeah, it's coming up. That's right.
Well, I'm sure glad you called.
Yeah, I did all right because I wanted you to kind of tongs and I don't know what all over the years. And he died in the spring of the year. He's an alcoholic, and he was in Trail City. So Dad bought his equipment and moved him out here, and he quit drinking.
Isn't that fun?
This is kind of go through some of the process. This is a wax sculpture. This is kind of like the first thing that I'll do is I'll sculpt out my subject, and then I try to build it again now using scrap metal. And this is a draft horse pulling a plow. And I wanted to include some corn and some of the different things that tell the story of the draft horse. So I got one of my bronzes of a pheasant hidden in here in the wheat field. And so I call these pieces that I put my bronzes in a hybrid metal art, because it's a kind of a hybrid. This is also in New Hampshire. gallery in Lemmon. Called the Glass Stand. Customers are getting really nice value. Okay, I'm not on mute, am I? So that kind of, sorry, you probably couldn't hear what I was saying, but one of the pieces there, the Longhorn, I wanted to do a piece that everybody kept telling me, you got to do a Longhorn and take it to Texas. So I did this Longhorn on spec. I put all this stuff in it that I thought Texans would love, like a guitar, a violin, the Alamo, Sam Houston, a boot, a spur, whatever. And I drove it down to Fort Worth and Austin. And so it was pretty interesting for people to be driving by and see this Longhorn go by on a trailer. And anyway, I ended up selling the piece down there to an alumnus of University of Texas. So that was kind of a fun adventure. And then when I deliver some of these pieces, I've got them on a flatbed, the ones that go to New Hampshire, and I would just leave them uncovered just to create a dialogue. And so it's kind of interesting to see some of the traffic pass you on the interstate, and then I might get a message that night. Somebody will do a Google search, try to find out who you are, you know, and send you a message and say, hey, I passed you on the interstate. That's pretty cool. So anyway, does anybody have any questions about some of the stuff that we saw in the video, or just anything really, I guess?
Yeah, just feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question, or if you'd like to leave it in the chat box at the little chat box at the bottom of your screen. You can do that as well. We'll keep an eye on that.
Now, John, you have those, the clay model to go by, and then your basic structure of sheet metal and so on, and then you choose all these pieces to try to shape like the animal, like you're going by your model. But your model's very realistic in that you must have a lot of pieces laying around to try to figure what goes where. Because a lot of that you can't plan that necessarily as to what pieces may work best. You may have pieces you want to add to it, but there's a lot of thought going into putting all these pieces together, right?
Here's a piece I'm working on, and I'll answer your question, John. That does bring up a good point, but I have to do a kind of a study of what I'm going to sculpt before I start doing the scrap metal thing. And so this is probably the most important thing I can do, is to do this maquette and make sure that I got all the proportions right and kind of got everything figured out. But so it's kind of when I get back into the shop then and I start welding these pieces on, it's kind of an in the moment kind of a thing, because like you said, I can't plan it out, and I kind of let it build itself. I've got all this stuff and I keep trying to put a piece up there, and if it doesn't work, I'll try something else. And so you're kind of going through this process, and then somebody will bring me a box of stuff that I didn't anticipate having, and there's something in there that's just like, oh my gosh, this is just going to be so cool. So then I'll put that on there, and then it sends the piece in a completely new direction. So it's kind of a fun thing, because I never really know what's going to happen or how these pieces are what kind of texture it's going to create. And so, and then I might decide, I want to put a pheasant in there. And so then I got to go to my wax shop and build a pheasant. And if I don't have something, a part of the narrative that I want, then I'll create it, whether it's in bronze or in scrap metal. When I put the Alamo in the Longhorn, I just made that out of sheet metal. So I really want these pieces to be able to tell a story, not just have a bunch of cool implements in them, but also you be able to walk around and it kind of talks to you. And I want the animal to look alive and to really hold your attention. So I really work on the eyes to try to create so that they're kind of looking back at you a little bit, and they look like they might even move if they felt like walking away or whatever. So yeah, it's kind of a process that's unpredictable, just because there's so many different varieties of shapes and sizes of pieces. And I often tell people, if I was in Italy, I'd probably be sculpting things out of marble. And if I was in Pennsylvania or Wisconsin, I'd be doing stuff out of wood because there's so many trees. But here in South Dakota, we have scrap metal. We have just fields of iron, and everybody's got a scrap pile. So there's always somebody coming in the Kokomo saying, well, I'm trying to get my husband to clean this place up. You can come out and clean our place up. So the generation now that's in charge of these ranches are trying to clean them up. And there's just 100 years worth of scrap metal on some of these places. So it's really been an interesting time for me to find materials, just because there's just so much of it around.
Mm. Well, and John, you just mentioned the eyes. Thea Ryan said that the eyes on the bison and bear were so real. What did you use for those?
Well, what I use is just anything that I can weld that's, so I found like a ball hitch on the back of a pickup that you hook up your trailer with. So they're perfectly round, and then I can weld to them. And I don't want to put anything in there that somebody can break or that's breakable. So everything I put in there is iron, and then I paint it to, or the eyes anyway, I paint them to try to make them look, you can use a glossy black enamel to kind of give them that little sparkle.
Okay. Prudence Debate asked, is there a place where you can find what public spaces have your sculpture? And of course, we know one of those public spaces is at the Brookings Arts Council here in Brookings.
Now, what was the question?
Is there a place where you can find what public spaces have your sculptures?
Yes, I have a map on my website, and that's one of the things I was going to show, was this map that shows all the different locations of my installations and then the addresses. So if you go to my website and you go to the menu, there's something that says map, and you can find, and it's actually pretty easily. Just Google John Lopez map probably, and I guess it'll come up. But
yeah. Let's see. Steve Randall asks, what do you do with the clay models after the sculpture is done?
Sometimes I'll cast them in bronze, and then I'll include them in the piece. Like in Hill City, the Iron Star sculpture that I did, the model for that, I cast it and I put it in the sculpture. But if I don't cast it in bronze, I keep them. And I use them for, I might, this draft horse actually was the Black Hawk that's pulling the plow, and I just kind of changed it now. This is going to be a blacksmith, a farrier putting a shoe on a big old draft horse. So sometimes I'll alter them and turn them into a new piece, but it's a continual, my pieces kind of have an evolution to them. I start these pieces in wax, and then I'll keep the original, and instead of starting from scratch, I'll just take that and I'll alter it into something new. And so sometimes I have a mold, a rubber mold made of them, so that I always have a way to make a copy of them.
Well, Linda Hoffeld asked, how many sculptures have you done? Have you kept track? And then she wanted to know specifically, where are the two buffaloes?
Well, the two buffalo fighting, that's at the Kokomo in Lemmon in my gallery. And the Kokomo is my gallery. And anyway, that's the Battle of the Little Bighorn, Custer and Sitting Bull fighting. So Lemmon is kind of an interesting place, where Custer came through this area on the way to the Black Hills, and he camped just out of town here. And then Sitting Bull grew up on the Grand River, that's just not very far from here. So there's kind of a crosshairs here where the two paths might have crossed. And so that piece is kind of historically significant to the area. And I don't remember what the rest of the question was.
Oh, do you know how many sculptures you've done? How did you keep track of that?
I don't really know how many, and I don't really like to think about it. I just like to think about the next piece I'm going to do.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see. Carol Cole asks, which city in France acquired your sculpture, and what's the title of it?
So it's The King of the Plains is the title of it, and it's in Rhodes, France. And St. Croix is the name of it's like a zoo, but it's it's not a zoo, it's more of a wildlife sanctuary where they have these really big kind of meadows, and they have animals from all over the world. And so their latest addition to this park was the North American themed animals. So they have the American bison, coyote, prairie dogs, raccoons. And so when they added that part to the park, one of their architects knew about my work, and they recommended me, and I did this sculpture and shipped it to them. And you know, you build this crate and you put around the piece, and then they put it in a shipping container, and it rode a train from Chicago down to Louisiana, I guess. And when it come time to put it on the boat, they didn't put it on the boat. So my sister and I are flying to France to go to the unveiling, and they called and said, well, the buffalo's not on its way, it's, you know, lost. Anyway, so by the time I get back to South Dakota, then the buffalo made it, but I was sweating bullets, hoping that the ship didn't fall or the piece didn't fall into the ocean. But quite a process to ship a piece that far. But they were so happy with it, and I see it shows up on Instagram every once in a while. Some of their visitors will hashtag John Lopez Studio or whatever. So right next to the sculpture that's in France, they put up these boards that talk about me, and it's in French. I think part of it's in French and part of it's in English. And so that was really, they really went all out to promote me on that piece. So I'm really proud of that. And it's called the King of the Plains, I think it is.
Let's see. Ann Hollinger asks, have your international artist friends visited you in Lemmon?
Well, I do have a couple friends from Nigeria that come every year. Jonathan Imafador and Dotun Papula, they came and lived with me over the years for a month in the summer. And so they've done some of the murals there at the Kokomo, and they've done quite a few murals in the state of South Dakota. So that's been kind of an interesting thing. But some of my international artists friends sent me some blossoms, different things to put on the tree. And every once in a while somebody will come, but none of the people that I met in Qatar have come yet, but they will. I think they'll make their way to Lemmon.
Probably not in the winter.
Probably not this time of year, yeah.
Let's see, Chuck Bennis asks, what's a typical week look like for you? Do you have multiple sculptures in process?
Yep, so I've got like this wax maquette behind me, and I've got 2 or 3 sculptures underway in the shop. I've got 2 or 3 sculptures underway at the Kokomo. It's just kind of everywhere I go, I've got a piece looking at me like, you better work on me today. So, but the ones that I always have a deadline on one of them that needs to be done. So then that's the one I'll end up working on. But yeah, it's a continual, some in the spring when things come back to life here and start growing, I'll start a lot of new pieces. And so it's a little overwhelming at times. When I had the cherry tree in my shop and all these branches and all these blossoms, it was kind of like I had nowhere to step because there was no room in there. And I couldn't put some of the branches on it until I got it outside because the door wasn't big enough. So anyway, logistics.
Yeah. Let's see. Boy, we have lots of questions, so this is good. What has been the impact of your studio to the city of Lemmon? That's coming from Joan Baker.
Well, there's a block there on Main Street that the block that my gallery is on was just a rotten, moldy abandoned, all the buildings were abandoned. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buildings that there's nothing happening in. And I think that's happening in a lot of these small towns. And so when I was commissioned to do this, I was commissioned to do a sculpture of Ed Lemmon, our city founder. And I don't think my video showed that piece, but it's Ed Lemmon on a horse, and we call it, I put it in a couple lots, and a couple empty lots right in the heart of the downtown. And we call that Boss Cowman Square. So a boss cowman he's the boss and he's a cowman, and that was kind of Ed Lemmon's nickname. There's a book named that or something, and so he became known as the Boss Cowman. So every year they pick a man and wife that exemplify the Boss Cowman. So I made this park in honor of Ed Lemmon and put the sculpture there, and I had this the north side of the Kokomo. This was before I renovated the Kokomo. So I power washed that wall and put a primer coat on it. And then when Dotun and Jonathan came from Nigeria, I had a cattle drive that I wanted them to paint this cattle drive on it. So the sculpture kind of had a little bit of a backdrop, something that went along with the sculpture. Because it had, before that, it had palm trees with a monkey hanging out of these palm trees, and it just did not fit. So they painted that mural, and everyone in town was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if the Kokomo falls in and that beautiful mural is ruined? So I started kind of looking inside the Kokomo, and I thought, man, this would be a great place for a gallery right next to that sculpture garden, if you will. And so it had good bones, it had a good basement, good foundation. So I decided to tear the roof off, put a new roof on it, and then just completely gut it. And so then the next couple of years, I decided to talk the city into tearing the building next to me down. Kids would come in the Kokomo and be like, hey, there's some baby raccoons playing in the window next door. And so that was really hard to compete with cute baby animals. Anyway, so it was just a raccoon nest and just gross. And so we tore it down, and that's where I put the tree of life. And so I feel like it has, I hope that it's done a lot of good. I think the people in Lemmon have really been appreciative, and anytime somebody has company, they'll come to the Kokomo and show their company. This is a point of pride for them, something that they want everyone to see. So it's been really good. People have embraced it, and I think that every year we're getting more visitors, and the word is kind of spreading. And we get a lot of people from Bismarck, actually, and a lot of people from different North Dakota towns. So people from Rapid City to Bismarck, or people that are going from Wisconsin or Minnesota to Yellowstone or Medora. A lot of people are on their way to Medora. So we're trying to do some interesting things in Lemmon, and we have an interesting group here called Placemakers, and they have workshops in the wintertime that teach you a different skill, or they'll have a painting class, or a glass etching, or soap making. And so that's been really interesting. We have a young landscape architect that moved here from Bismarck, Michael Van Beek, and Judy and Todd Larson. They have live music, and Eliza Blue is from Bison. So we've got all these creative type people in the area that really want to do something. They want to take this creativity and help the community. So it's a good time to be in Lemmon. I feel like maybe I was a part of helping jumpstart some of that.
That's good, thank you. Steve Randall is asking about your custom-made pieces. He said it looks like you do have some custom-made pieces, including portraits. How are those made?
Okay, I had some custom-made pieces.
He could see those in your video and was wondering how those, like the portraits, were made.
Oh, Yes, the portraits of Sitting Bull and Custer, I sculpted those in clay, and then I cast them in bronze. So if you missed the beginning of my program, I kind of talked about my discovery of sculpture at Northern State University. I did a lot of bronze casting and sculpting, and so I kind of go back and forth from the sculpting in clay to the scrap metal, and sometimes I merge the two together, and I call those a hybrid metal art.
It looks like you would have to determine the scale on your custom piece way ahead of time so that you'd have it ready to put in.
Yep. Yeah. That piece actually of the two buffalo, that took me 4 years to do. And I mean, I didn't work on it the whole time, but it was kind of I had to think, you know, I had to really think about that piece and not rush it. So that was a big idea, and wanted to make sure that it came across right.
It looks great.
Thank you. Yeah,
Jody Lundgren. Oh,
go ahead. Go ahead.
No. Well, this was a new question from Jody Lundgren. She said, do you do a lot of commission work or create and then wait for a buyer? How do you approach sales and developing a pool of collectors?
When I first started in this scrap metal, I would build a piece and then I would take it out and take it to an art show and sell it. So now I'm just getting mostly commissions. It's really hard for me to find time to do, like the cherry tree and the last stand, the two buffalo fighting, those were ideas that I wanted to do. And so I'm going to keep those as a part of my permanent collection here in Lemmon. And doing that cherry tree was kind of it was a different direction for me because it's not an animal, but it still has this quality to it that pulls you in, and you've got to go in and look at it to see what's going on there. So I'm glad, you know, that I'm able to find these different directions, and I want to explore that a little bit more to where I'm not just doing the same thing over and over. I completely forgot what the question was, but
nope, that was, I think that answered. And in fact, it leads to the next question. David Dorsey asked, is there a particular sculpture that you have always wanted to do but haven't done yet?
You know, I've been really good about doing the ideas that I wanted to do. And one of them was the Hugh Glass. That was one idea that I just always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to do. And I played around with these different models, trying to decide how am I going to have this piece. Am I going to have the bear just discovering Hugh Glass? And it's like, there's no action, but they're just looking at each other like something's about to happen. Or am I going to just put it in full action, like you don't know what it's not looking good for Hugh Glass. So that was a piece that I really wanted to do. And this draft horse thing, I kind of want to go off into the draft horse thing, and I think those pieces really lend themselves. That subject matter works really well with the kind of materials that I'm using. So there's a lot of ideas bouncing around in here, and you never know which one's going to come out next. But I think I've done all the ideas that I've been wanting to do.
Yeah, and I think that answers probably Tina Davis's question about, she says, so the story in the scrap metal evolves as you create the piece, or do you have a preconceived idea when you started?
Well, I have an idea in my head that I think the piece is going to look like. And like when I started the peacock, it was going to be this completely different thing. And then I found I don't know, somebody gave me, or I found some of my Aunt Effie's silverware or something, and I started adding these spoons to this peacock, and then all of a sudden I needed 1,000 more forks and spoons. So then I would go out and search for these certain things that I didn't have. So sometimes this certain texture will start and I have to find the rest of that texture. So I start to go out and search for these certain things. But a lot of times I'll just kind of go with what I have. So you just never know from one day to the next what little thing is going to send you off in a new direction. And that's kind of the fun part about it. It's a discovery, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see. Mike Burke asks, other than paint, how do you get some of your coloration of the metal? Is it heat,
Well,
chemical? Yeah.
The patina of the piece, sometimes I use ferric nitrate if I want to activate a little bit more rust to kind of meld it all together so that it looks like one. And every piece is different. You know, sometimes I don't do anything to the piece and it just naturally looks good. I don't have to change anything. And I add very little paint, and actually I just kind of rub the paint on top of some of the rust that's already there, and then the rust will kind of eat away at those colors through the years. And it's interesting to see how rust acts with different colors. And so that's a fun part when you're welding a piece to a sculpture and it's got blue paint on it or it's got orange paint on it, and that will also send the piece in a different direction, because I kind of like to leave those colors, because after they've aged for like 40 years, that kind of does something to the viewer. It's like it really reminds you of something. It kind of takes you back to your childhood. And so sometimes, you know, I don't want to manipulate some of that stuff too much, but it's every piece is different.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, Mike Burke also asked, do you do your own bronze?
I don't have a foundry, so I have to send my waxes to Loveland, Colorado. There's a couple different foundries, Art Castings or Mad Castings in Fort Collins, Loveland. And there was a foundry in Hill City, and they cast the 2 busts of Custer and Sitting Bull that are in The Last Stand. So some of my pieces were cast in Hill City, but no, I don't have a foundry. And I know Tony Kitka cast a lot of his own pieces, and it's a very time consuming, it's like a whole nother thing to have your own foundry. But I don't make my own molds anymore really either. I used to make my own molds, but right now I'll get to a point and I'll finish a sculpture, and then I send it to Jim Mahar in Spearfish, and he'll make the mold for me. And so because I kind of started taking shortcuts on some of that stuff, and it's not my strong suit, so I just let somebody that's really good at it do it, and then I know it's going to turn out. So
good. Well, this is the last question, at least for now, from Jerry Kurtz. Where's your studio and junk pile as opposed to the inn?
Okay, so I live 3 miles east of Lemmon, and my welding shop is at my house 3 miles east of Lemmon, and then the Kokomo Inn, the gallery, is in Lemmon on Main Street. So my welding shop is 3 miles away from the gallery, and it's the perfect distance, because in order to isolate myself to where I can actually get something done, I can't have constant interruptions, because I'm wearing a face ventilator or a face mask so I don't breathe in the fumes. And I got goggles on and a welding mask, and so it's virtually impossible to talk to anybody. But so then when I get tired of welding in my shop, I just drive 3 miles into the gallery, and and see if mom needs anything. My mom runs the gallery, and sometimes people will make appointments ahead of time, and so they'll say, well, I'm bringing my grandson and he's really interested in art. Could you come and meet him? And so it's just kind of a back and forth thing. And I love planting plants and playing in the garden. So I've taken the sculpture garden. There's a sculpture garden on each side of the Kokomo. One's called Boss Cowman Square and the other one's the Tree of Life. And so I like to plant lots of different ornamental grasses or flowers or whatever. And so that's kind of my release to get away from the shop. And then I just love to plant plants.
If any of us were planning a visit, is the best way to let you know we're coming to contact through the website, or?
Probably my my email. You can either email me, johnlopezstudio@gmail.com, or just call me or text me or whatever. All my contact information is on my website. And yeah, it's always a good idea to just check ahead, and because we live in a small town, you never know from one day to the next what, you know, if anybody's going to show up. But in the summertime, we seems to be busy enough that we're always there. So
that's good. Well, we just have a couple more minutes, but this is a good maybe wrap-up question. What's your next big piece? Tell us.
Well, my next big piece is this sculpture I'm working on in the back here, and it's this big, bulky draft horse, and they just got done plowing the field, and this guy's gonna change his back shoe. So I like to create photo opportunities like when people bring their kids. And I have some angel wings back in the Tree of Life sculpture garden where you can stand in front of these wings and get your picture taken. And so this piece here with the draft horse, I want kids to be able to come up and act like they're feeding the horse, or they're watching the guy shoeing the horse, and then they can be a part of this interactive. And so I want to make the horse out of a bunch of old blacksmith tools, and kind of tell the story of the blacksmith, because every so many miles in the Midwest here, everybody had blacksmith tools and a forge, because you didn't have electricity and you didn't have a welder, and the only way you could fix some of that stuff was to fix it yourself. And we've lost a lot of that history. So I kind of want to bring some of that blacksmith story back with this piece, and create a space that has this big anvil, and looks like he's been working on this horseshoe, and then now he's putting it on the horse. So I'm not real good at explaining my pieces there. I'm better at creating them.
Well, I think you've done a great job of explaining today, and just giving us a view into who you are and your beautiful work and your processes. So we really appreciate it.
Yes, really, thank you, John. We really appreciate you taking your time and effort to put this presentation together for us. It was a wonderful program, and it was fun to see those questions come up. And many programs, people are afraid to watch or ask questions, but it was really great to get those. And it would be great if the Guild, excuse my phone, but it'd be great if the Guild could put together a road trip to come up to Lemmon in the near future. But if not, you know, we encourage all our members to make that trip and visit your museum and see your sculptures, and hopefully be able to meet with you. And so thank you again for this great program you presented to us. And this actual program will be available on the museum's website and on the Guild's page on the museum's Facebook and the museum's YouTube. So people have an opportunity, people that weren't able to be here can see the program. And again, really thank you so much for doing this for us.
Well, yeah, and I want to encourage people, or I want to inform people that there's a lot of other things to see here in Lemmon besides the Kokomo. We've got the Grand River Museum. They've got a lot of history. They've done an amazing job with their museum. We've got the world's largest petrified wood park. Don't forget about that. And Hugh Glass, there's the Hugh Glass history. So there's enough things to do here that it'll fill a day. So hope you guys can come and see us.
Well, I know after seeing that petrified wood, that park there, I always wanted to go up in the hills around there looking for petrified wood. It's such an interesting landscape around Lemmon.
Yep, we find a lot of dinosaur bones, and so the Grand River Museum has some real dinosaur fossils and skulls in there, and a lot of our Sitting Bull history and Rain in the Face, and so very interesting history here.
Okay. Well, thank you, John. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.